What up guys, today we're going to be reacting to a new channel called E2B and the video titled Who Would Win with Equal Stats, Goku or Superman. Now I've already seen this video, so it's not going to be a new reaction. I already know what his decision is and his points that he made, so I have my own arguments against his points because I don't really agree with either his conclusion or his arguments that he made. Not all of them, but a lot of them, if I'm being honest. And this was suggested to me by a couple of my viewers because of my last video I did on Jarbs and Goons one on Goku versus Superman. I had a lot of disagreements. I even made a 3-part video about it, responding to all the Superman fans that were commenting against me. And I will say this, if you guys thought those 3 videos were a little disconjointed, just know that it was supposed to be one whole video. The video was supposed to be around almost 3 hours. It was like 2 hours and 42 minutes long, but my computer, you guys already know the whole problem with me doing the gameplay for my videos and stuff, and my save space or my space on my computer was basically taken up mostly, and making a video that big with that much editing in it required too much memory on my computer. So I basically, instead of redoing it again, I just cut it into 3 segments. So that's why I felt a little disconjointed, because it was supposed to be one whole long video, but it just wouldn't accept it when I tried to upload it to YouTube. So I had to cut it into 3 shorter videos. So it was technically 1, but it seemed like 3. So yeah, that's why I was a little disconjointed. Also, I do want to say this is going to be my last video talking about Superman for quite a while. It's not like I'm never going to talk about him again. It just, I feel like not talking about this character too much because I personally don't hate him. I know a lot of people might think that I hate Superman. I actually do love Superman. I watched, Superman Lois season 3. I really like that with him fighting against Doomsday and then, fighting onto the moon. I didn't expect that. So I do like Superman, but I really just don't like his fan base. I do think his fan base dick rides him a little too much. For me personally, I just feel like, since the last video and stuff, I've been having too many discussions about, Superman and stuff like that. And it has died down, but I just don't want to make any more arguments back and forth with Superman fans. At this point, this is going to be my last video because it was suggested to me, so I'm going to just react to it. And then after this, I'm just going to be focusing on other characters and other topics about Dragon Ball because, like I said, I've talked about Superman more than enough, and I don't even hate his character, so I'm not going to waste my time just bashing on him. Because personally, I'm just saying how I feel about his power. Now, with that being said, I do want to give a big shout out to a new subscriber of mine by the name of Obelisk. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, Obelisk. Thank you to you for subscribing to this channel. Like I said, I already seen this, so I already know some of his points, and I can get into that. So yeah, also want to say sorry for the long-winded introduction. I just felt like I had to explain some stuff. So yeah, let's get into it.
Goku versus Superman is one of the most debated cross-verse topics in the fictional debating community. And while interest has died off in recent years, the topic remains controversial and spikes up in popularity on occasion. However, that's not exactly what I'll be discussing today, and I'll instead be looking at a far less debated variant of this matchup. In this video, I will cover Goku vs Superman with equal stats, looking into their experience, skills, abilities, intelligence, and more to determine who would win this battle. Since stats will be equalized, this means their strength, speed, durability, and stamina will all be equal for this hypothetical battle. While both characters do have ways to augment their statistics, they will initially be equal, though it can change as the battle progresses. Goku will be starting off in his Mastered Ultra Instinct form, while Superman will be in his base, but with standard sunlight reserves. We will be looking at Dragon Ball Super with his manga and anime showings, while Superman will be his Rebirth version, with his post-crisis New 52 and Rebirth feats being applicable. Citations for all these feats will be put on screen so you guys can find them, but me saying them out loud would take way too much time and recordings. I will cover both how these characters would use their abilities in character as well as out of character. This makes a pretty big difference since both of these characters don't use some of their abilities in most battles, or at least don't start off with them. With these rules in standard set, we can begin analyzing this matchup, starting with skill. Goku is one of the most skilled martial artists in the Dragon Ball series, having been trained by numerous martial artists and having been in battles against various fighters. He's won martial arts tournaments, created his own techniques, and mastered godly martial arts. Goku has shown the ability to adapt to his opponents mid-fight, like when he created his own technique to counter Roshi despite only seeing him use his technique once. He could also instantly find counters to Ten Shinhan's multiform technique and did the same to Hit's time skip. After having just gained Super Saiyan God, Goku learned how to nullify Beerus' punches. Even as a kid, he was able to mimic the Kamehameha, an attack that takes years for martial artists to master, by only seeing it once. He can also fight without his sight by analyzing the air currents. Goku has been stated to have no openings in his guard, though this is a bit inconsistent with Goku being infamous for lowering his guard in important situations. However, in most combat situations, Goku will not lower his guard if he knows who his opponent is. Goku has trained for decades, learning techniques from all sorts of masters. Master Roshi, someone considered to be a martial arts god, eventually ran out of things to teach Goku. Goku even mastered Ultra Instinct in less than an hour, something literal gods struggle to learn. Goku has decades of experience in battle, but it's clear his skill should not be limited by his age. As mentioned before, Goku could counter-hit someone with over 1,000 years of experience in combat by just watching him in one fight, and almost won their fight. Overall, it's clear Goku is extraordinarily skilled, surpassing even gods in terms of skill. He can adapt to techniques after simply seeing them once, and has very few, if any, weaknesses. Moving on to Superman.
So I think that's a good stop point because he just finished Goku's analysis with his martial arts skills. Now he's going to Superman. He does go into extensive length about Superman's martial arts because he wants to show why he's really good at fighting. And it makes sense because usually when people talk about who's the better fighter, it's automatically Goku. So it makes more sense that he would go more in depth on Superman's capabilities to prove a point or why he's better than a lot of people think he is. Though I do disagree with a lot of the statements and arguments he makes for Superman's martial arts or fighting skill, but I'll get into that later. I do want to talk about him talking about Goku dropping his guard down a lot. Yeah, that's a thing in Dragon Ball Super, but not that much in Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z. It was never really mentioned that much throughout there, and obviously he would drop his guard down once in a while, but that's with any character that in a fight would drop their guard. But if you look throughout Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, there wasn't that many instances where he really dropped his guard down, and it wasn't that much of a, I guess you can say, much of a problem for him to drop his guard, because in Super they made it more of a frequent thing. They made it fixated on a lot more, and they made it seem far more dangerous of a thing. Like if you drop your guard, you can be taken down or hurt by literally almost anything. But in the original, yes, they had moments where their guard was down, but they would never took any real significant damage, even when the attack was equivalent to their own power. And I've already made a whole video about that, talking about the durability, and it went through all the feats throughout Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, where we see Goku being caught off guard or depleted of energy and tanking stuff that he shouldn't have, and that technically he would have died if he was in Dragon Ball Super itself. He did say something else that I thought was, he stated that Goku within like an hour was able to obtain Master Ultra Instinct, which, Beerus and the other gods haven't been able to fully master. But the problem with that statement is that's not technically true. From what we saw from the Tournament of Power, yes, it looked like he was just unlocking this and learning it now. But if you guys saw Whis' training, Whis has been training Goku and Vegeta since the beginning. Since the beginning he trained them, he's been training them to obtain, Ultra Instinct. The only difference is he didn't, emphasize on the fact that he was going to do that. But you see through his training, he's trying to teach them to move without thinking throughout the entire time. So no, Goku and Vegeta did not, especially Goku, did not learn the Master Ultra Instinct within an hour. He was learning this as he was training with Whis throughout the entire time. The only thing was that once when he got to Tournament of Power, at that point he got pretty much a good hang of the basics on how to achieve this, and then he got pushed even further, especially due to being able to absorb his Spirit Bomb. But for him to say that he was able to unlock it within the tournament, that's when he started, that's not true. He's been trained by Whis prior to this. So from what I heard from I think it was Frost, when but between the time of Universe 6 versus 7 tournament, he stated a year had passed. So it's been more than a year since, Whis has been training him, which is still pretty impressive and short, but he didn't do it within an hour, so that isn't true. And then the, dropping his guard down, I do see his point, but that's more of a thing with Dragon Ball Super Goku, whereas in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball GT, that was never really a big, that wasn't something he did quite often, and it wasn't that big of a, problem. But he's going to get into Superman's martial arts skills, which I disagree with. You guys already know where I stand on Superman's fighting abilities and what he's capable of.
The last son of Krypton is significantly more skilled than some claim him to be. He's been trained by the likes of Batman, Wonder Woman, Mongol, Wildcat, and Myoska. A Superman guidebook also refers to him as a combat master. He has repeatedly shown knowledge of pressure points, and has even been shown beating characters similar in stats to him via superior skill. Superman even defeated Ultraman and Superwoman, alternate versions of him and Wonder Woman, via his skill. Superman is highly experienced, having been in battles with all sorts of different characters, with years of experience as a hero. He even fought in Asgard for 1,000 years, and while he did have time to rest, he spent parts of every day in combat. In the New 52, Superman defeated Wraith, someone stronger than him, via his skill. He also has mastered Kryptonian martial arts, such as Turquoise Rao and Turquoise Vo, giving him physical and mental techniques, as well as making him a perfect weapon. Superman can adapt to his opponent's abilities, and could even adapt to robots that were adapting to him, as well as people who could read his moves before he even made them. He can use shifts in the air currents to locate opponents, and has fought while powerless many times. While he was in Cobra, a peak human's body, he fought Cobra, who was in Batman's body. While both characters were physically even, Cobra boasted he was a master practitioner of all martial arts, but Superman was able to overcome him due to his experience anyways. There are some questionable metas for him scaling to Batman or Wonder Woman in skill, but I'll touch upon those a little bit more later because it's a bit less interesting discussing this topic with those feats in mind, and they are, as I mentioned, pretty questionable. But even still, disregarding that, Superman would still have tons of experience, training, and techniques he can use in combat. He's incredibly versatile, being able to adapt to many different styles on the fly. Now let's move on to abilities. Superman has many.
Okay, I want to stop there because now he went through his martial arts skills, now he's going to go to his abilities. I think he talks about Goku's abilities more towards the end of the video than in this part where the analysis. Now he stated a bunch of things about Superman's fighting capabilities and his martial arts prowess. He says, I'm going to just go back a little to see some stuff that he said to remember. Because he said quite a bit and I just let it run on because I wanted to hear what he was going to say. So I'm going to go back a little bit and then I'm going to just stop at some points and just go through each part of these.
Weaknesses. Moving on to Superman, trained by the likes of Batman, Wonder Woman, Mongol, Wildcat, and Wyoska. A Superman guidebook also refers to him as a combat master. He has.
Okay, so let's go through that. He's been trained by many other characters in DC that are very great fighters and hand-to-hand combatants, right? But that doesn't mean he's equivalent to them. There's a lot of people that are even close to what they can, are capable of. Because it really depends on how much they trained him and how thoroughly he was trained by them. Was he just trained a bit by them, or is he trained fully by them? And second of all, we also know that even with that training, Superman's really nowhere near their levels. He's going to talk about that later on too. He doesn't fully believe that, but he does think that he could at least do some stuff in that level. But let's be honest, every time Superman has fought Batman, Wonder Woman, even Aquaman, anytime he's fought them, he's gotten his ass handed to him until he's used his power. The only times he's really beaten them is when he's overpowered them with his power, but when it came to his fighting skills, he never really had the advantage. Batman has booked him even with his superpowers and Batman just having a super suit. Wonder Woman has beaten him countless times, and in the Injustice storyline when he had, when Alfred got there was this little vial that gives you the powers of Superman for a couple hours, he took it and he dominated, Superman. He easily bodied him. And yes, that's the Injustice universe, so it's not the exact Superman timeline all the time, but it is a variant of Superman. And like I said, Superman, most of the times when he's fighting against his opponents, he's either overpowering them, or he has an opponent that's powerful as him and they are just not very skilled, so he can outbeat them, which that's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later throughout this video too. But him saying that he's got trained by all these people, it doesn't really matter when you see his skill and it's nowhere near on par or up to par to the guys that have trained him. He's been trained by a lot of people, but he's nowhere near that level. Whereas Goku, he has been trained by them and he's surpassed these people. Master Roshi, when he first got to him, he's like, I just made you guys do strength and conditioning to Goku and Krillin, because he's like, you guys already know everything to know about martial arts. I don't really have to teach you anything about fighting. He was teaching them more about how to get physically stronger and more about the principles of martial arts itself, not being cocky, always knowing that there's somebody stronger than you out there. But it wasn't really about technique, because technique was never their problem that they had. It was more their mindset that he was trying to mold, and the conditioning that he was trying to mold their physique to be more superhuman in nature. But the martial arts skills, he really didn't touch upon that much, which it did suck for me to watch as a fan to not have him touch upon that. But yeah, he trained with them, but that doesn't really mean anything. Like let's be honest. From what when we see him fight, he hasn't really done anything that level. But going back to it, like I said, I want to go through each part. I want to go through it first. Maybe I should have just cut it at each part. I know you guys get annoyed when I do it every little short time doing it, but if I'm going to do this anyway, I might as well have just done that.
Has repeatedly shown knowledge of pressure points, and has even been shown beating characters similar in stats to him via superior skill. Superman even defeated Ultraman and Superwoman, alternate versions of him and Wonder Woman.
Okay, so let's talk about that then. The pressure points thing. In real life, pressure points don't really work. I mean, jamming your finger at some weak spot is not going to work. Obviously, if you hit them fully, but then again, you're just going to be hitting them normally. But those are very easy to learn. It's like simple parts of the body to attack, like the liver, the side of the head, right here in the bridge of the nose, obviously the groin, the solar plexus. It's not like it's a complex to know which parts of a human body to attack to do significant damage, like the ear. There's so many places you can know that's easy and it's just like straightforward. I'm not even a martial arts expert at all, and I know most of like the weak spots of a human that you could literally attack, but he says he used the pressure point technique. That's one technique that I see him use quite a bit, but it's not even that impressive since Goku had that technique done to him by Mercenary Tao. If you saw the fight against him versus Mercenary Tao, he hit him with it. I don't know if it was in their first fight or their second fight, but he did hit Goku with it, and it didn't really do anything to him. And then you also see Tien do the same thing to Goku. When he gets him up against the wall, he starts basically hitting him. Unlike Superman's one, where they don't like emphasize on it being a pressure point technique, it is still the same movements. If you look at him, he does the same thing, and it didn't do anything to Goku. So Goku's already seen that way back, all the way back in Dragon Ball. So that's pretty a low level technique. And then he said he beat characters that are on his level, and this is what I mean by the characters that he beats that are on his level. When you actually read the comics, he doesn't do anything insane to beat them. It's pretty easy. Like he beat Ultraman and Wonder Woman there. All he did was grab Ultraman and use him as a bat to swing and hit I think Superwoman, they called her, Wonder Woman, whatever, but he used him as a bat to hit him. Where's the insane martial arts prowess that you need for that? He literally, the pressure point thing, I guess you can say that, but Goku, like I said, already seen that in Dragon Ball, so that's not even that crazy. And then his big thing is just grabbing one guy and hitting the other person. That's not that impressive. Like, anybody can do it. People focus more on, oh, he beat this person, he beat with the martial arts, instead of focusing on, well, how did he beat them? Well, if you look at it, he didn't do anything crazy to beat them. He literally just grabbed the man and smacked her like he was a bat. And that was nothing too crazy.
Via his skill, Superman is highly experienced, having been in battles with all sorts of different characters. With years of experience as a hero, he even fought in Asgard for 1,000 years, and while he did have time to rest, he spent parts of every day in combat. In the New 52, Superman defeated Wraith, someone stronger than him, via his skill. He also has mastered Kryptonian martial arts.
Okay, so I want to stop there. So he's saying that, and this is a point he brings on towards the ending too, where he states that he has more experience than Goku because he's been around longer and he's fought more threats and dangers. And that is true, okay? I'll admit that. That is true. But the problem with that argument is the fact that even though he's fought longer, it's not like, think about it this way. He's fought more enemies, but are those enemies better of a threat, hand-to-hand wise, than the threats that Goku fought? No. Yes, he's fought more enemies, but most of those enemies usually are way weaker than him, so he just overpowers them. Or even if they're on his level, they're not really that skilled, so they're easily to beat if you just have some levels of skill. Let's be honest, if you put Goku in the same fights as Superman has, Goku would do better with his hand-to-hand combat skills. Even if we ignore the power and stuff, Goku would be able to handle them hand-to-hand combat-wise and have no real problem. But if you put Superman against, the threats that Goku faced, let's take away the power because he would be more powerful than some, but weaker than others. Let's just say they were equivalent on Superman's level. Do you think Superman would be able to throw hands with them? I highly doubt it. I think these guys would be bodying him. So yeah, and I talked about this also in my other video where I was talking about battle IQ versus regular IQ, and I mentioned the fact that just because one person has fought more doesn't mean that the fights that they've been in has been more challenging. It really depends on the level of challenge they had through, physical demand and the skill prowess of their opponent and how they skillfully beat them. Because in boxing or in MMA, but especially in boxing, there's a lot of people with big undefeated records, and a lot of people don't take it seriously because most of those undefeated records records or against people that don't really have that much skill or are very fresh. So it doesn't really matter. It's mostly a padded record. That's the term that usually goes with this, called padded record. So you might have somebody who has dozens upon dozens of fights even more than their opponent, but they will still lose because their opponents that they're fighting against were, one, weaker than them, and two, they were just not that skilled. Whereas this guy, even though they fought less people and fought for less years, they fought more like stronger competition, tougher opponents, and these guys were able to push them further and make them, become better. So if you have more fights but they're not really pushing you, it's not going to make you progress that much compared to having less fights but having more of a challenge. So it's really an argument of quality versus quantity, and Superman definitely has the quantity side on his in his argument, because he has a ton of like enemies, but Goku has the quality. His enemies are far more of a threat hand-to-hand combat wise, because whenever Superman does fight somebody who has decent hand-to-hand combat, he pretty much struggles against them or gets outright beaten by them. So there's that. And then he mentioned Wraith. He said, oh yeah, he was able to beat him, but he didn't do anything crazy. Show to me what he did to the guy that was so crazy. All he did was use his cape to wrap around his arm and put it behind him. It's nothing too crazy. If Goku also fought against this guy, he would be able to easily body him. This guy wouldn't be able to get a single hit off of him. So it really depends on what he did too. Not just, he beat an opponent that was stronger than him with his skill. Yeah, well, how much skill did he need to show to beat him? Because from what I've seen, and I can't fully say, but from what I've seen, that it didn't seem like he had that much skill. He seemed just like a straight up brawler, and all Superman did was use a bit of technique to beat him, which isn't that impressive, if I'm being honest.
Such as Turquoise Rao and Turquoise Vo, giving him physical and mental techniques, as well as making him a perfect weapon. Superman can adapt to his opponent's abilities, and could even adapt to robots that were adapting to him, as well as people who could read his moves before he even made them.
Okay, so talking about the other thing now, he mentions the other martial arts that he learned from the Kryptonians. I will talk about that because he does mention the theta state, and there's something I want to talk about. I feel like a lot of people just don't understand, but that's later towards the video, towards the end of the video. But he states that he fought monsters that could adapt to him, and then also fought somebody that can read his movements in the future. So did the guy have mind reading abilities? Because that's easy to beat. We've seen this countless times in fiction where there's a person who can read your mind. All the character has to do is just not think and do, and that's easy to do. You don't have to think about all the martial arts skills. You can just beat them. So once again, did he do anything crazy to outsmart them, or did he just not think and just throw shots that just didn't like? He just throwing random wild shots. That doesn't really matter. And then him talking also about going back. Like I said, sorry if I'm a little scatterbrained. Sometimes I forget pretty easily.
And could even adapt to robots that were adapting to him.
Okay, and then the adapting monsters that he was against. I know you can make that argument, but did they adapt to his power, or were they adapting to his skill? Like, are they like Taskmaster, where he can copy your fighting ability and you have to outbeat him? Or are they just adapting to his power in general? Because even if they adapt to his fighting skill, it's not that impressive. Goku's fought against multiple people that were back and forth. He's able to adapt. He's able to study them and learn, even with crazy abilities like hit in his second fight. So that is not going to just mean that he's going to beat Goku, and doesn't mean he can handle Goku's skill level. I have to really see that to see more fully, but he said he adapted to it. It really depends. Is this a consistent thing he does, or is it like a one-time thing in this? And was it them adapting to his power or his fighting skill in general? And also, if that was the case, then what did he do to outbeat them? Not just saying he did it, showcase movements that he did to beat them.
Shifts in the air currents to locate opponents, and has fought while powerless many times. While he was in Cobra, a peak human's body, he Master Practitioner anyways. There are some questionable methods, less interesting disregarding that. Superman would still have tons of experience in many different styles.
Okay, so you said fought Cobra, this guy had great martial arts. Once again, I need to see it because a lot of times, shows and stuff, they say, this guy's a great fighter, and then you see the fighting, it's not that crazy. I guess it's just, and sometimes writers, they would like to hype up a character, but in reality, when you see what they do, they don't do anything too crazy. Like, you see somebody like, oh, this guy's a really great shooter, and then they shoot like this and they're not really aiming. So it's like they don't show the same skill and technique that it would be required of somebody of that high level. They just say they are. But I do think that's a good argument to use. But then again, Goku fought against countless more beings that had better hand-to-hand combat skills. So just because he fought one guy that was really good at fighting and adapting doesn't mean that he's going to just beat Goku in that regard.
On the fly. Now let's move on to abilities. Superman has many iconic abilities, most notably his heat vision, freeze breath, superhuman senses, and solar energy absorption. However, he has many more abilities, and even his most basic ones have many somewhat obscure applications. Superman's heat vision, aside from being a powerful heat-based attack, can be amplified for great effect, telekinetically attack molecules, channel through his X-ray to target the brain, seal holes in reality, ionize the air around things to nullify them, and hurt intangible beings. Superman's senses and analyzation abilities are also absurd, greater than both Batman and Wonder Woman's. He can notice flaws in Martian Manhunter's shapeshifting, hear signals from a solar system away, can hear brain frequencies, and even see an infinite distance in front of him. Superman can approximate melting point by looking at enemies, calculate the pressure auditory nerves can withstand by simply looking at the person.
Okay, so he said quite a bit of abilities. Like I said, I'll stop a little bit because sometimes when they bring a bunch of it, I have to talk on those points, because if I don't, then somebody's gonna be like, well, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about that. It's like, well, it's either I have to stay here and, stop every time and then go in depth, or I just let some stuff slide, but then people are gonna complain no matter what. So yeah, going through it, each of these abilities that he has, some I agree with, some I do not, and some I do think that it's not that much of a, it doesn't really matter that much. So let's go back. He said he has telekinesis. From last time I checked, Superman, one of his abilities was not telekinesis, to the point that, when you have Superboy Prime, not Superboy Prime, but Superboy, the regular one, he has tactile telekinesis, and that's stated in his bio for his abilities. So if Superman does have telekinesis, that would have been put in his bio for his superpowers, right? But the fact that it isn't means that that's probably not the case, or he might once in a while they just write it in, incorporated, but that's not actually a part of his, power set, because if that was the case, they would have just outwardly mentioned it, like I said, like Superboy. Because Superboy is stated he has tactile telekinesis. They go out of their way to mention it. Where Superman, they don't do that. And also, if Superman did have telekinesis himself, why would they emphasize on Superboy having it? It's like, obviously, Superman has it himself, so why would you need to emphasize on his clone having that ability, which he should? But remember, the clone was adapted a little bit more by Lex, because he also has Lex's DNA in him. So the telekinesis thing, I don't really believe that Superman technically has telekinesis, because whenever he's been in a fight, he's really never used telekinesis. Some people say sometimes he does, but it's more often not the case,
Attack molecules, channel through his X-ray to target the brain, seal holes in reality, ionize the air around things to nullify them, and
okay, so those other ones, I don't get why. I get you're explaining his abilities, but explain abilities that are going to help him out in the fight. Some of these parts don't matter. Like, he can stitch parts of reality with his heat vision, okay? So, what is the point of that? He can attack people that are intangible. One, I do not know if that is true. Is that comic book that he's showing there, did that really happen? How did he do that? But even so, Goku doesn't use intangibility anyway. The most he does is use like an after image technique where he can move so fast that he's gone, but like that's not him being intangible. So like, you're not gonna hurt him. It's just where he used to be. He was moving fast back and forth. Then he said he can ionize the air around them to nullify that. I don't know, that might be more of a weaker thing that will work like on a lower level of power. It might not really be a significant help. It might help out a little, but I don't think it's going to be really that important.
And hurt intangible beings. Superman's senses and analyzation abilities are also absurd, greater than both Batman and Wonder Woman's. He can notice flaws in Martian Manhunter's shapeshifting, hear signals from a solar system away, can hear brain frequencies, and even see an infinite distance in front of him. Superman can approximate melting point by looking at enemies.
Okay, so he said quite a bit of stuff there too now. he stated that Superman can hear. He said he can hear from a solar system away. I already disproven that. What happened in that comic was Jimmy Olsen had a watch. He pressed the watch, and this was when he, I think, All-Star Superman, when he came back in, and he had a watch, and Superman saw the blinking on his watch. It wasn't him hearing anything. It was a blinking light, so that's how he caught on. So that was just wrong. Then he mentions the fact that, Superman's brain is better than a computer and better processing than, Batman and Wonder Woman. And this is also another problem that I see with this argument. And I mentioned once again in my video of the battle IQ versus regular IQ, and I mentioned that people take somebody's IQ where they can analyze something and say that will work for a strategy in fighting. And that's not the same thing, because his IQ he's using here, and he explains a little bit more later on, is, by processing information. He said he can tell changes between, Martian Manhunter's, physique, other like smart things, but and like I said, I don't really remember. I don't want to replay it all over again but those things he was explaining had nothing to do with fighting. It's not like him analyzing his opponent's abilities or analyzing his opponent's fighting style and being able to adapt to it and use that for as help for him to fight against them. So that doesn't really matter. Like I said, that's regular IQ. You have people in, scientists like astronomers, they're really good at analyzing. They can analyze stars, chemistry and all this other stuff. But that doesn't mean that they can they have great analytical minds when it comes to fighting. You look at a fighter, most fighters are not that smart. They're not very intelligent, and you don't need to be intelligent to be very, be able to analyze a fight very well. So that's a pointless argument to make. He's trying to conflate these two different things as being the same thing, saying, well, he's smart enough to know all these other intelligent stuff, so that means he's smart enough to understand fighting. That is not the same. Those are completely two different things. If you take Batman's strategic mind when it comes to hand-to-hand combat and Superman's intelligence, his intelligence is not going to really help him out against Batman. Even though he stated that Superman's brain processes information better than him, it doesn't help him out in a fight, right? Even against Superman, who's way slower than him, weaker than him, he's still able to beat him and outmatch him when it comes to fighting, because even though Batman naturally also has a very analytical mind, he also specifically has a very fight strategy and fighting orientated mind, or battle IQ mind, where Superman's is mainly on just regular IQ, which does not matter, because by that logic that would mean that any nerd out there, some super smart nerdy guy that can analyze coding or whatever, that means that they can analyze a fight. That is not the case. That is just not true. That logic is so dumb to think of, because that's basically saying that you would have to be a genius who can analyze pretty much anything to be good at analyzing fighting. But most fighters are not that intelligent, but they're really good at analyzing fighting. And there's a lot of intelligent people that can analyze other stuff, but that doesn't mean they're going to be good at analyzing a fight. So that is just not true. It might help out, but it's not going to be directly correlated. It's comparing apples and oranges. So this is the difference between battle IQ and regular IQ. And what he's showing here for his argument points for Superman is more just akin to regular IQ than actual battle IQ. So I don't agree with that statement he's making right there.
An infinite distance in front of him. Superman can approximate melting point by looking at enemies, calculate the pressure auditory nerves can withstand by simply looking at the person, and subconsciously find the ballistics of every bullet someone has ever fired, and the vector and mass of each of their bodies.
So the laser thing, the heat point might work, but if he's against somebody with equal stats, that might not really... It will do damage, obviously, but it won't give him a significant advantage of he's against an opponent that's equal, all stats. That's not really going to help out that much. The auditory thing, I guess that can help out, but all that is basically just, clapping air pressure into somebody's ear to blow out their eardrums or to take out, their hearing. That is nothing really crazy. Even Goku could do that. I mean, he's never done that before, but he could have, I guess, if he was against him in a fight. He says the ballistics with the bullets. See what I mean by his IQ? He's using his mind that he's very analytical and very intelligent and stating that will work in a fight. If you look at also through the Batman comics, you have Tim Drake. Tim Drake is considered the smartest, Robin, and to be considered the most, best detective out of all the Robins. Whereas Damian is shown to be the best hand-to-hand combatant. Damian is not that smart. I don't think Damian could do what Tim Drake does, but Tim Drake can't do what Damian does. Damian's mind is more when it comes to fighting. He's more of a fighting genius, whereas Tim Drake is just a regular genius. And the argument that he's using here for Superman is, well, he's able to find the casing of the bullets. How the hell is that going to help you out in a fight? Okay, great. He has a great detective mind. Being a great detective is not going to help you out in a fight or know how to analyze fighting. Like I said, he's conflicting two different things and saying it's the same. He's like, well, it's intelligence and it's, strategy and analyzing, right? But what are you analyzing? By that logic, like I said, if you're a nerd, that means that you will be really good at analyzing fights. And if you're a martial artist, that would mean that you have to be very intelligent to analyze a fight, which isn't the case at all. There's very intelligent people that have great analytical minds, but they can't analyze a fight. And then there's people who are not that smart and don't have really that great of an analytical mind, but when it comes to fighting, they understand it. And this is the case in point with anime characters. Goku, Naruto, and Luffy. I mentioned in that IQ versus battle IQ scenario, even characters that are I don't want to say the word, but even characters that are completely stupid, unbelievably dumb in real life, are geniuses when it comes to fighting, because those are two different things. They don't equate. You have Piccolo and Gohan. They're very smart, and Piccolo is definitely strategic, but compared to Goku, even though he's way dumber than them, he's more strategic mind than both of them. And these guys are naturally smart and martial arts wise smart, yet Goku's above them. So once again, conflicting two different things, and he uses this as this big case in point of he would beat Goku because, not only he had more fights and more experience, but he's also a better strategist because he's able to analyze bullets and where they are, and apparently that correlates with him analyzing an opponent's abilities or fighting style.
Every bullet someone has ever fired, and the vector mathematics, and can do precision work even better than Batman's machines. He even found a weakness in an infinitely programmable machinery, unimaginably more complex than even Kryptonian technology. The Man of Steel also has very
Once again, see, he's saying he can analyze technology and this and stuff, and then he has that. It's regular IQ. It is not battle IQ. Those are not the same thing. Like I said, Tony Stark, Lex Luthor, Bruce Banner, there's countless other characters who have intelligence, who are very smart when they can analyze this stuff too. But that doesn't mean they're good at hand-to-hand combat either. Like, that is dumb. Unless if he's making an argument where he's like, he fought an opponent who had great martial arts skills, and he was able to analyze his abilities and his timing, and time it up, and then, counter his fighting. Then that's one thing. But him saying, comparing him being able to outsmart a machine and then be able to analyze the weak points of a machine, it's not the same as analyzing the weak points of a person who can fight.
impressive feats with his phasing. He has phased through punches from Doomsday, energy blasts from Mongol and Mongal, went invisible, and even can phase through an opponent to negate their durability. Superman also has
Okay, so right there, he states that he can phase through attacks, like energy attacks and physical attacks. That doesn't really mean anything. Goku did that all the way back in Dragon Ball. That's just called the after image technique. Goku's done that countless times. He's done it with physical attacks and energy attacks, and he's been able to do multiple of them all the way back in Dragon Ball. We're going past Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z and Super, which he would have been way past that. So that's not that impressive. And I do want to focus on this because he does act like Goku can't do that himself. Goku's done that countless times. Then he says he went invisible. Once again, something we've seen in Dragon Ball all the time. He went invisible against Krillin when he was fighting against him in, I think it was the 23rd Budokai Tenkaichi tournament. He was moving so fast that Krillin and Master Roshi couldn't see him. Only person who could somewhat see him was Tien. He was able to see where he was at a certain moment, but as a whole, he was basically invisible. The whole crowd was like, where the hell did he go? And even before that, you had Master Roshi versus Krillin. They dashed at each other, and within a fraction of a second, they were literally doing multiple different things, and they had to explain the process of what they were doing at that speed. We had Goku, moving so fast that even Kami couldn't see him. He's like, I can't see him with my godly eyes. We've seen them, in the Saiyans when they arrived and Nappa was fighting and they were fighting, and Gohan's like, I can't see anything, and then Piccolo's like, idiot, don't use your eyes, focus with your energy, and then he was able to see them. So that's also something they've been able to do. And then him negating durability, what the reverse flash thing can vibrate into them. Here's the thing that people don't understand is, yes, he can do that, but there's also a way to counter it. It's basically just vibrating your body and phasing out of it. So if you can phase, you can literally phase out of the attack. And this happened in, I think it was, I forgot if it was Hunter Zolman's Zoom or Iro Barthon's Zoom, but they tried to do it to Wally, and Wally just phased out of it to get out of getting hurt. He was doing it to him and he was getting hurt until he started phasing it out. So if he does it to Goku, I'm pretty sure Goku's smart enough to know, hey, I'm going to phase out of this attack. He normally phases or dodges attacks anyway, so why wouldn't he do that now? Even if Superman was able to get close into him, Goku would be unable to phase out of it. And there's nothing that will stop him from doing it. For one, it's a basic technique. Two, he's done it before. He's been able to phase through attacks, so it's not like he's too stupid to think of something that simple. And then three, if their stats are equivalent, that would mean that Goku's speed was be equivalent to Superman. So even if Superman can vibrate, vibrate his hand and vibrate through it, Goku can dodge it, and he can do that himself. We've seen with Goku fighting against, Cell. Every time when they're trying to punch each other, they're phasing and then they're dodging it completely. So that attack also wouldn't work. So those 3 phasing abilities that he was using, him being able to phase through attacks, him going invisible, and him being able to negate durability by phasing through it. Goku's done it before, and it just requires you to be fast and, move your body, vibrate your molecules. And he did this all the way back in early Dragon Ball 2, so I don't know why he's acting like this is a big thing. Even if we want to say, well, Goku doesn't phase through people's bodies, we don't see him do that. The technique is still pretty simple, and if Goku sees it being done to him, he can avoid it and then also do the same, He's not an idiot. He also has the ability of mimicry, so even if he didn't do it before, he could just, copy it afterwards.
Has regenerated from holes in his body, stabbings from spears, and a broken leg. He's absorbed many solar-based kinds of radiation, and stores radiation like a solar battery. It would take 2 days of pure darkness for Superman to run out of his reserves. Superman's control over static electricity allows him to seal up temporal breaches, and make fields to capture opponents. He can also use the theta state to fight subconsciously and...
Okay, now he's getting into quite a bit of stuff. He stated that Superman can regenerate and he can absorb a ton of energy, so he has higher stamina reserves. I agree with those two. I don't have any problem with that. His regeneration, I do think, is going to be the biggest detriment to his, not detriment, but biggest advantage that he's going to have against Goku, because even though Goku might be a better skilled fighter, in my opinion, Superman still, his ability of, regeneration is going to be a big problem to Goku, because Goku can't regenerate. Some instances show he can, but as a whole, he really can't. The most he can do is have his energy, use his energy to heal him up a bit, but that's not that great of a healing, whereas Superman, he's been able to regenerate from severe, damage. But then again, I guess you can make the argument of, well, even if Goku can't do that, he's fought against opponents that can regenerate. He's fought against Piccolo, he's fought against, Majin Buu, and he's fought against Cell. So it's not like it's something new to him, but it's just something he can't do. So I'll agree with that. The energy of, storing, I also agree with that. Goku has his regular ki, but I'm pretty sure Superman being able to store his solar radiation, and the fact that he's going to get power from the sun anyway, so he can get a continuous level of energy reserves, whereas Goku can't. He has a finite one, and is going to go down and down, whereas Superman, even if it does go down, he can replenish it with a sun alone. So that, I think those two things are his biggest advantages in this fight, and I fully agree with that. I think these are going to give Goku the hardest problems. And then let's go back a little. He talks a little bit about the theta state, so I want to get into that. He says he has the thing where he can stop particles around them. Yes, he can create barriers, but it's not like these barriers, he's making it sound like these barriers can stop and negate anybody. If he's against somebody who is on his level, Goku would be able to break out of it. It's not like it's going to just stop him. It might, hinder him for a bit, but Goku could definitely break out of this. And the static electricity, let's be honest, static electricity is not going to stop Goku. He in his Super Saiyan forms, like Super Saiyan 2 and 3, generates electricity around his body, and they can shoot electrical attacks anyway, so that's not going to really do anything to him. He can literally negate that with his, abilities. But then he's going to the fighting, so let's let him explain. I'll get into that a little bit.
And make fields to capture opponents. He can also use the theta state to fight subconsciously and make mental distractions. Metropolis's best also has many resistances. He has resisted soul targeting and soul draining attacks, and has resisted many different forms of mind manipulation, including Mr. Mixius Pitilix, Martian Manhunters, Parallaxes, and Brainiacs. He's also resisted reality warping and transmutation. Superman.
So sorry guys if I keep on going back and forth with the thing, because like I said, he jam packs quite a bit of it within a couple of seconds. He just states a bunch of abilities. So I want to go through all of them because like I said, I don't want to have any arguments there.
Metropolis's best also has many resistances. He has resisted soul targeting and soul.
Okay, so first he talked about the theta state. Now, a lot of people get this misconstrued, and so does he, and I don't know why they think it's the same, but so what he does with the theta state is he learned the ability, since usually he has a problem with people attacking his mind, so to prevent his mind from being attacked, he learned this, the theta state, where it's basically he can use, he doesn't have to focus on like a fight. Let's say he's in a fight, he doesn't have to focus on a fight, and let's put this scenario. He's fighting somebody physically, but then somebody else has a psychic attack. Now that will be a big problem for him, because now he has to focus on fighting this person, but he also has a psychic psychic attack there, and he can't fully defend against it. So he would need some way to be able to fight that person and also fight off that, but give his full power to that, to both sides. So how does he do it? The theta state. The theta state basically allows his body to do the actions on its own, whereas his mind can wander off and fight in an astral projection form against, psychic attacks. So you can use 100% of his mind against that, and then his body 100% is going to fight on a physical front. So it's a fight between a mental and a physical front, which is very impressive. But he tries to equate this to being comparable to a Mastered Ultra Instinct. A lot of people do, but it's not the same thing. Here's why. Mastered Ultra Instinct, what it does is it basically stops the signals coming from it. Well, the signals come from your brain to your body. That's how it works. Your brain processes information, signals go from your brain to your body, and then your body moves accordingly. But the way we train Goku is the fact that he doesn't need to wait for that signal. So his brain doesn't even have to see it. His body just feels it and senses it, and then he naturally reacts to everything. Kind of like Spider-Man Spidey Sense, but his body also additionally reacts to it. And this sharpens his, his offense and his defense. It makes him not waste his energy, makes him faster, and it also increases his other stats on top of it. So it's not just, ability increase. But Superman's one, what it does is, all it does is frees his mind to fight off psychic attacks where his body can handle it. Now you guys will say, well, isn't that the same thing because his body is basically acting on its own? But the difference between Goku and Superman's one is Goku's body is literally acting better. It's basically doing what Goku does, but a far more sharper, more accurate, less energy wasting, stronger, and everything just better. Whereas Superman is basically just him normally fighting, but now he can fight psychic attacks. So he's against an opponent who has psychic ability, or against two people and one of them has psychic ability. He doesn't have to worry about, trying to focus on one or being attacked in the mind while he's trying to focus. He can basically fight on two separate fronts at the same time. And his physical body, yes, it does use its own reactions, but it doesn't have a more sharp fighting style than Superman naturally does. Because when Goku goes into his Master Ultra Instinct state, he's far better of a fighter and far more of a polished fighter when he goes into that state. Whereas Superman, when he goes into this, his fighting style is still the same, his speed is still the same, his abilities is still the same, his technique and stuff. The only difference is that his brain doesn't need to be there to do it. So his body basically had muscle memory, remembered all of the fighting that he did, and basically just fights accordingly. So if Goku is fighting against him, one, Goku doesn't use psychic attacks against his opponent, so that would be a pointless. And second of all, let's say even if he is using it, his abilities would not change. It would basically be like fighting Superman still with his levels of abilities and his skill, the same thing. The only difference is that if Goku tried to attack him mentally, now he would be fully prepared for that. But Goku wouldn't do that anyway, so Goku wouldn't do that anyway, so it's pretty much pointless. It would basically just be Goku fighting against still Superman. It doesn't augment his abilities at all. All this does is give him, a defense against psychic. And sorry if I'm explaining this quite a bit. I know some of you guys might be, because I don't want to confuse you guys. I want to go in depth and explain it with you guys understanding fully well what I'm trying to convey. Because what I'm trying to say is when Goku goes to his Master Ultra Instinct form, he is better than he normally is. He's far more polished. It's not just his responses are faster, it's his responses are better, more polished and clean. Whereas when Superman uses his theta state, his movements and his technique are still the same. It hasn't changed. The only change is that if you attack him mentally now, he's going to be prepared for that and doesn't need to focus on the fight. So that really doesn't change. So it's basically Goku goes into Master Ultra Instinct, his abilities increase. Superman goes into a theta state, his abilities are the same. The only difference is if you attack him mentally, you're not going to be able to just beat him easily there. But his physical stats is going to be still the same. He's not going to get stronger. He's not going to get more polished. He's not going to be using less wasted movement. He's just going to be fighting the same. So now let's go through that stuff. He says he can negate soul manipulation. I don't see where any of this is trying to him to steal his soul at all. Even if he can negate soul manipulation, that doesn't really matter. Goku doesn't use those abilities unless you say Hakai, but he's only really used that once in the manga. In the anime, he never used it. He only used that once in the manga, and I highly doubt he'd use that in a fight against Superman. So that's pointless anyway. Then he says he has mind hacking, protection against it. He does have a protection. We've even seen Batman have it, so it doesn't have anything to do particularly with him. It just strength of will and technique. Whereas in Dragon Ball, I don't really think that's the case. Yes, you can make an argument for Vegeta. He fought through will, but he also had a higher power level to be able to match it. And even when you look at Dabura and stuff like that, they might not have that strong of a will or as powerful as Vegeta, because he is technically more powerful than even him. So that's how he was able to break out of it. And Batman is able to break out of that stuff like psychic attacks, but that's only really in DC. If you just have will, you can break out of it. If you go to Naruto, if you get trapped into genjutsu, just having strong will alone is not going to help you break out of it. Because look at Naruto, his main thing is he never gives up, and his ninja way is to keep on fighting. Yet when Itachi puts him into genjutsu, he can't break out of it. Why? Because, in other worlds, that just doesn't work. So then there's going to be a disconnect there. But also, going on the him fighting the psychic thing, that isn't fully true, because there's a lot of fights where Goku's fought against people with psychic abilities and it has worked against him, like Maxwell Lord when he made him fight Wonder Woman, and this was explained in Death Battles Goku versus Superman 1, where they're saying that he was fighting against Wonder Woman, but why was he fighting against him? Because Maxwell Lord manipulated his mind to think that she was Doomsday and killed what's her name, killed, I forgot, Lois Lane, who's pregnant with his child. So he mind messed with him. He's had mind manipulation done to him. And if you actually check up online, does Superman have any resistance to mind hacking abilities? It will showcase majority of the things stating that he has some defenses, but he's still pretty vulnerable to psychic attacks. It doesn't mean that he has perfect defense against it. He just has a higher level against it. And if you look at Mixius' psychic abilities might not be that great, because he was able to be mind controlled by Martian Manhunter, who is not a fifth dimensional being. And then and then you also had Martian Manhunter not being able to go into Joker's mind because he's too crazy. So that really doesn't matter. Also, Goku doesn't use his psychic abilities anyway, so it's pointless.
He has Pitilix, Martian Manhunters, Parallaxes, and Brainiacs. He's also resisted reality warping and transmutation. Superman.
I don't agree with the reality warping. Transmutation, I don't know about that, but reality warping, no. When he's fought against Mixius has been able to manipulate him. To say that he can fight against reality warping is not true, because if Mixius can do it, then how can he fight against it? And then you have like the red kryptonite. Red kryptonite changes, Superman's physiology and does random things to him. If he could, negate that, then the red kryptonite wouldn't be changing his physiology, now would it? So yeah, I don't agree with that, because we've seen more than enough instances where he fought Mixius, and Mixius uses reality warping abilities, and it has affected and worked on Superman. He does not have any ability to negate that.
Can resist existence erasure from beings like Darkseid, Mixie, and the Time Trapper. He can also break.
Not true. I do not think he has existence erasure. He's trying to use this as a counter to Hakai. He said Darkseid did Omega Beams. Here's the thing, Darkseid uses it sometimes to wipe them out of existence, sometimes just to take them out of time, like how he did with Batman. So usually when used against Superman, it's just used like a regular laser to obliterate, not as much as an existence erasure ability. And then he said Mixius couldn't erase him. That's not true. If you look at the Emperor Joker story event, when he was talking to Mixie, he's like, he explains to him, and he actually made a video on this on Superman's strongest opponents, and he talked about Mixie, and he actually used stuff where he showed Mixie turning him to dust and blowing him away. He also talked to Superman. He told Superman, he's like, why do you think Joker isn't going to kill you right away or wiping you out of existence? He's like, I don't know. And then he said, he's trying to mess with you, he's trying to toy with you, he's just having his fun, he's sadistic, he's torturing you. So he could have, but he was just messing around. And Mixius usually messes around. He's not trying to wipe Superman out because he finds him as fun. And if he really had the ability to negate existence erasure, then how come when the Anti-Monitor was wiping out universes, he was able to wipe out countless Supermen? Even pre-Crisis Superman felt like he was in danger and that he couldn't do anything against it. So if he can resist existence erasure, then Anti-Monitor wouldn't have been able to do anything. Mixius wouldn't have mentioned that in the Emperor Joker storyline event, and Mixius wouldn't have been able to do all this other stuff. And the reason why Mixius doesn't do it is, like I said, he wants to have fun with him. What's the point of wiping him out of existence? That's no fun. He always holds back on him because he wants something crazy.
Break out of time stop, resist telekinesis, survive attacks on subatomic levels.
Him getting out of time stop, okay, I agree with that, because if he moves at the speed of light or faster than that, he should be, be able to control time. Because when you go at the speed of light, basically time stops for you. So it makes sense that he would be able to negate that. So I agree with that. Him talking about the telekinesis stuff, it really depends. People make it sound like, well, this character was able to move through it. Was it because they have like, do they have the ability to nullify those abilities, or is it they just muscle their way through it? Because telekinesis, as long as you're strong enough to move through it, it will not affect you. For example, when you had we had, what's his name, Chaozu. He was using his telekinesis to stop Krillin when he was fighting against him, and he used it against Goku when he was fighting against Tien. But when Nappa came in, he was trying to use it on him, and he's like, my telekinesis is not working. Why did it not work? Because Nappa was just too powerful, so he was able to power through it. It wasn't because he has some ability where he can negate just, a telekinesis. It was just that he was stronger than him. And Superman's a very physically strong guy. So telekinesis, all it does is hold you back or bind you. And if an opponent is strong enough to muscle their way through it, that doesn't mean they have a resistance to it. It just means that they muscle their way through that. So that's just the case. That's how I feel like with the telekinesis thing, because Goku does have telekinesis. And once again, if they're equivalent in power, then Superman would be struggling against it to move out of it, because if they're equivalent in power, then it's hard for him to do that. Especially if we're going to the argument of him muscling his way. Now you're saying he has the ability to negate that technique, then you can say, well, it doesn't matter if they're equal or if he's strong and he can negate it. But is that really the case? What ability does he have that negates, telekinesis? He doesn't. He just muscled his way through it. So I don't really agree with that argument there. So yeah, the telekinesis thing, that argument, for me personally, it's just he muscled his way through it. It's not like he had some ability that negated telekinesis in general. And if he's fighting against some opponent that's equivalent to his power, then that telekinesis would be more of a significant effect on him, because he's just stronger than them. The attacking on the subatomic level, I do agree with. I already made the video talking about attacks on subatomic level, and I feel like a lot of people's mindset is, oh, if they attack on subatomic level, that means they can destroy anybody. That's not how it works. Basically, it just means that their attacks not only attacks them as a whole, but attacks every fine little point of them, so it can obliterate them completely, so regeneration wouldn't be that much of a factor, and that it can bypass durability somewhat, but not completely. It really depends on how durable the opponent is. If the opponent is just a bit more durable than them, or like let's say they're above them like this, then it will be able to beat them. But if they're way more durable than them, it's not going to really work. So against like Superman and Goku in this scenario, no matter if either of them had that ability, it wouldn't work on the other, because their durability would be equivalent. So that would basically negate that. So I do agree with that.
And can somewhat resist kryptonite. Hell, he's even figured out how to counter teleportation. After getting stronger than ever after the events of Warworld Apocalypse, Superman has shown the ability to create portals and create constructs in his form, almost like a Green Lantern.
Okay, so he said he can counter teleportation. It's easy to counter teleportation. It's basically if an opponent uses teleportation and if their fighting style is basic, all you have to do is read up their movements, so wherever they teleport, you can be able to just, think where they're going to be and hit them there. And I already made a video talking about that also. And he uses this against Goku's instant transmission, saying if he uses it, he can just fight against him. But here's the thing, that's only against an opponent who moves linearly. When Goku was fighting against Dispo, he mentioned that Dispo might be faster, but Dispo, the problem with him is he's too linear in his movement. So even with teleportation, he's able to counter it, but it really depends on the person's skill. So if he's against Goku, who's very skillful and has used this technique quite a bit, maybe at first Superman may be able to handle it, but if Goku knows that and uses it smart and sparingly, which he usually does, he doesn't use instant transmission every time. He uses it once in a while as a setup in a fight, basically like a fake out and stuff. So I do think he can get the drop on Superman quite a bit by using it, because he's using a guy who used teleportation and had basic movements. But Goku's a martial arts master, so he would know not to use the basic just teleport right behind him and stuff. He would be a little more creative with it. And when he's fought against, Beerus, he wasn't just teleporting once and then did it. He was teleporting multiple times to distract him and trick him. Now, I'm not saying that it would completely work on Superman, but he can use it to adapt it. He's making it sound like, well, he was able to do it against one guy that wasn't that great of a fighter, so it works against everybody that's, that uses teleportation in general. And he says he can use portals. Yeah, that's true. He can use portals, but teleportation is better than going through a portal. And so could, he did it, and Goku was able to destroy his pocket dimension by just powering up. And then he says he has an energy construct, so does Goku, so it's basically equivalent in that. And it doesn't seem like that energy construct, increases his abilities. It just seems like he can further out his reach, which that does give him an advantage, but not significant.
Superman's versatility is ridiculous, giving him many ways to fight against characters physically more powerful than him, and immediately create strategies to overwhelm opponents. Goku also has quite the versatility, with his abilities being quite an underrated aspect of his. Goku's abilities are all based on his use of Ki, which is composed of vigor, courage, and right-mindedness. This gives him quite the arsenal, due to the many applications Ki has. For example, while we all know Ki can create large laser beams, most famously the Kamehameha, it can also be used to blind opponents via the Solar Flare, paralyze opponents via the God Bind. He can also use it to heal himself. Goku can create Ki Mines, use telekinesis and the Kaya Wave to push back opponents, and create barriers for defense, which can shield himself from poison. In Dragon Ball, Ki beams attack on an atomic level, meaning Dragon Ball characters can dish out and survive that level of precision. He can also teleport via instant transmission, and can somewhat use the Hakai in the manga, which can erase characters from existence. On top of what I've mentioned before, Goku has also shown regeneration passively, and can nullify attacks, both physical and energy-based. Goku can see through illusions, can sense his opponent's
Okay, so talking about the regeneration, like I said, yes, he was shown that in Battle of Gods, the anime, but after that, we never seen it again, so I wouldn't count that as him having that. He does have a bit, because we saw when he healed up, Frieza when they were first fighting on Namek, but it's just like he can revitalize a little bit, but it's nothing really significant, so I wouldn't say he really has regeneration. Superman definitely has regeneration. Him, you can kind of argue, but I wouldn't go fully with that.
Intentions. Use the Kienzan to cut through stronger characters and can survive the Hakai, which, as mentioned before, is existence erasure. He also has Ultra Instinct, which allows him to subconsciously move, dodge, and attack. Even when just showing a hint of Ultra Instinct, Goku could dodge a lethal blow before Beerus even started attacking. He can also attack non-physical beings, as shown both against Hit in their second fight and when creating ripples against Infinite Zamasu. As a Saiyan, Goku can get stronger by fighting, though the amplification varies. As well as this, when he gets stronger, he will also get faster and more durable, with Ultra Instinct amplifying his stats even more, making him sharper, faster, and tougher. Goku resists paralysis, as he was able to get out of Frieza's imprisonment ball, and can resist time stop, as shown by him surpassing Hit's time skip. Goku can restart his heart with a Ki Blast, and can seal his opponents with the Mafuba. He can also create 7 illusionary clones of himself. He also adapted to Granola's pressure points after getting hit by the technique once, and can use the Genki Dama, a huge ball of Ki that requires the energy of either others or celestial bodies to use. His Kaioken ability also amplifies his stats, but hinders his stamina significantly, especially when in higher forms. He has shown the ability to resist extreme heat and cold, specifically the former when he endured lava in the Broly movie. Goku can also create a giant Ki avatar, increasing his range, giving him extra protection, and possibly even increasing his attack potency. Overall, Goku's mastery over Ki gives him good versatility and equal stats. Now that I've analyzed how complex this battle is, I'll go over the many possibilities. Many of Goku's abilities get countered by Superman's senses, as Superman could use his senses to determine where the Ki Mines, Kienzan, and the real Goku amongst the afterimage/illusions are located. It would also easily let him deal with instant transmission. He could definitely resist Hakai, and could likely see Goku's plan with Mafuba beforehand and avoid it. However, Goku could see through a lot of Superman's illusions, as he can both resist illusions and figure out the intent of an attack. He could use his own senses to negate Superman's invisibility, and would more than likely be able to hit Superman while he's phasing. Goku could likely use a barrier to block off Superman's freeze breath.
Okay, so let's go with this. He says he can locate many of Goku's other abilities, like the mines and stuff like that. I don't know if he can do fully with energy. Maybe he can do with some currents, but we don't know to how astute his ability is in that regard. But I think that's fine. He said he can counter instant transmission. Like I said, he was against a character that was more basic and linear. It's not like Goku's going to be just doing the basic stuff. He does it sparingly. He does it more strategically, and he does it mostly for a big attack that he's just trying to get close up. So yes, Superman might be able to negate it somewhat, but I don't think as a whole he can completely counter it. Then resisting Hakai, because he says he can resist existence erasure. I don't really agree with that argument, because whenever he fights against Mixius is just trying to play with him. He's not trying to wipe him out. And then the Joker storyline, when he had his full power, he himself stated that he wasn't going to do it because he didn't he just wanted to play with him and mess with him. And then if that was really the case, the Anti-Monitor wouldn't be able to erase all his other Superman from the other realities, and wouldn't pre-Crisis Superman, which is one of the most powerful Superman, wouldn't be terrified of him. because then it wouldn't really affect him, but it could erase him. So erasure does work on Superman. I don't agree with that. But then again, I don't think Goku would really use Hakai technique. I think that's kind of dumb. And then he said he'd probably avoid the Mafuba. The Mafuba really depends, because here's the thing about Superman. Even if he does see attack coming, Superman is very, he's very proud of his durability. He usually doesn't always dodge his attacks. He usually takes them because he knows he can handle it, or he believes that he can handle it. So if Goku uses the Mafuba, he would know that he's using the attack. He just didn't know. He wouldn't know what the hell the attack is. He wouldn't know if it's just an energy attack, or it's a ceiling move. So he would it could be a toss up. It could either be he's like, oh, he's gonna attack me, so I'm gonna move, or he's gonna be like, I can take this and just stand there, and Goku hit him, and then he's like, oh shit, it's actually not what I thought it was, and he tries to throw him in there. So it could work. It's either a toss up, like I said. Superman usually doesn't always dodge attacks because he relies on his durability. And then he stayed right here with Goku can counter his invisibility with his senses. Once again, Goku can go invisible himself, and I think Goku's senses are far sharper than Superman's. Let's be honest. Goku could literally sense energy. He can close his eyes and sense it. He doesn't have to see it. He doesn't have to hear. He could just sense it fully. So Superman has the ability, but it really depends on who has it better.
And could adapt to Superman's pressure points. Both characters have comparable regeneration, though it's possibly in Superman's favor, since he does need to use up Ki to achieve the same level. Goku's Ultra Instinct and Superman's Theta favor, since he does.
Okay, he says Goku could adapt to the pressure points. Yes, definitely, but he's already seen it happen to him, so it's nothing new, and Goku can do that too. I just feel like in Dragon Ball, pressure points techniques are not that impressive, because we saw with Mercenary Tao and Tien, and it wasn't really emphasized, so I don't think it's really that impressive. Yes, we saw a little bit more with Hit, but Hits was a little bit different with what he was doing. He was still at least fully hitting them, but like little taps, I don't think is really going to do anything. And he said they have similar regeneration. I don't believe that. Like I said, the only time we saw it was in the Battle of Gods anime, when he used it in Super Saiyan God, but ever since then he hasn't, where Superman continuously and constantly shown it. So I do think Superman's Goku's regeneration is very inconsistent. Superman's very consistent. Superman's on a higher level with his regeneration, and also Superman, he can, like I said, absorb sunlight. With him just absorbing the sunlight, he can regenerate, whereas Goku can only do from his finite ki reserves. So I disagree with that. I don't think it might just be some ability or technique has some similarities doesn't mean they're equivalent. That is not how it works. It depends on to what extent. So yeah, they're equivalent somewhat, but not as a whole. I would definitely give that to Superman.
Need to use up Ki to achieve the same level. Goku's Ultra Instinct and Superman's Theta State would counter each other in terms of subconscious movement, though Goku's ever-growing power would definitely give him an advantage.
See, that's what I mean. He's trying to compare, like, they have similar abilities, so that it means it's exactly the same. No. Characters can have similar type of abilities, but it really depends on to what level and degree they have mastery of it, and what level and degree it's able to work. Like time manipulation, you have characters who can, completely stop time and move through stop time, and then you have people like Dio who has a limited range of how much they could, where they can stop time, and then a limited amount of time that they can do it. So it really depends. Just because two characters have the ability to stop time doesn't mean their stopping time abilities are equivalent. It really depends on what are the drawbacks. One might have a limit to size and time. One might not have limit to size or time. So you can't say they're equivalent. Same thing with the theta state and that. And I went into that point quite a bit. And like I said, he mentions it here. I disagree with him. He might have an ability close to it, but it's not exactly the same. Because Goku's ability with his, Master Ultra Instinct is basically he doesn't need to think. His body reacts on its own, so his movements are sharper, faster. He's more accurate. He's wastes less energy, so it's more beneficial. Whereas Superman's one, it only really benefits him if he's fighting against somebody who has psychic abilities and trying to attack him on a psychic level and on a physical level. Now he can fight on two fronts at the same time. And yes, you can say, well, his body, reacts naturally, but what's the key difference? Goku's body, when it reacts naturally, works better. When Superman's body works naturally, it works the same. The only difference is you can't attack him on a psychological level. So when Superman goes to the theta state, it's not like his movements are better. His movements are the same. He's still going to be fighting the same. He's still going to be moving the same, still using the same abilities and techniques. Whereas Goku's techniques and everything is going to be sharper and a lot quicker and a lot more precise and a lot more polished. Superman's going to have just his regular fighting style, just with him also being able to fight on a psychological front, whereas Goku's going to have a more polished style and a more sharper version of his, natural his reflexes and are far faster. So they're not equivalent. They have some similarities, but as a whole, it's not a counter to that ability as a whole. His ability, Goku's, Master Ultra Instinct, is significantly different. It's significantly different and better because when he does it, he gets better. When Superman does it, he's still the same. The only thing he gets better is on the psychological front.
As well as this, Goku's Godbind could potentially paralyze Superman, at least for a little bit, as even a solar amp Superman has struggled with similar attacks. Goku could also likely resist Superman's electromagnetic barriers, considering he resisted paralysis from Frieza. Depending on what Superman throws out, he could also be able to nullify those attacks too. Superman could nullify Goku's ki beams too, however, and could definitely resist his limited telekinesis. His